All right, Georgia wraps up its first spring scrimmage of the year, 2025. The Dogs probably going to be a top five team, maybe top four, something like that, coming into 2025. Gunnar Stockton is going to replace Carson Beck, etc. You know the drill. So even though Georgia's coming back as the SEC champions, there's still a lot left on the table for them going into 25. That's why spring in 2025 is so important for them to get a lot of things right. There's guys that are hurt. And so it's sort of a typical spring. And one of the things that Kirby and company are wanting to do is go from the type of offense that was sort of plodding a season ago to a more explosive one. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in this video. As soon as I get through some of the specifics that we've been talking about with people at practice, people inside the program, people that had the ability to see the scrimmages. Scrimmages and practices are not open at Georgia. They've not been open probably for 5 years now. Most of the time, scrimmages at big schools are not open. They almost never open at Georgia. Their Spring's G Day, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, will be open. Make sure you're taking advantage of an offer we've got right now. You can get Dawg Post, what we run, for $1 right now. The link is right down below, and there's a lot of details that I'm not going to go through right now because they're going to be spelled out in articles, plural, that we have coming out over the next few days and weeks at Dawg Post. But it's been a good spring so far. The injury bug, Georgia's had some guys injured, not been major injuries. So that's one thing to keep in mind here is they get both Robinsons at running back healthy, or try to. All a litany of guys that they've had knocked out or taken out or have been taken out this spring. That's something to keep in mind as well. But I think when you consider what's been said about the scrimmage yesterday, or at least what one person said to us, it says no one really stood out. That is so. Let me walk you through that quote. Okay. We're in spring right now, and every spring and fall we get, and I'm talking about people like me, and I see other outlets report just, this guy is popping, or this is an unbelievable thing. And it turns out people flash. That's really what it is more than anything else. Okay. I'm old enough to remember Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall, guys like that, Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel. These were all guys that at some point were at Georgia and were young at Georgia. There's definitely a feel in the program at Georgia from observers that Georgia has upgraded its explosiveness in a very serious way. What I'm not gathering is that it's so crazy that it should be hyped up like nuts. And that's the part that when you talk to people who were there, no one really stood out to me. You can take that as good or bad. You can take that as, usually when people say that, they mean on the offensive side of the ball. That's almost always what people mean. No one stood out. They're not going to talk about, defensive linemen necessarily, although we do have some stuff coming up on Dawg Post in a couple of days about Georgia's revamped new defensive line. Make sure that you're taking advantage of the subscription offer we have down below. It's $1. It's $1. Make sure you're taking advantage of that today, because that's not always around, all right? But, these scrimmages are not necessarily... So Kirby at the beginning of spring emphasized that Georgia really wanted to get better running the ball and defending the run, and defending against the run. And if you're talking like that, you're not going to have crazy practice spring games. You're just not going to. And, it's also very possible, likely, whatever you want to call it, that the practices are structured in a way where those things are just, you're not going to have guys flashing and jumping out at things. Now, Gunnar Stockton scored a touchdown running it. Cass Jones scored a touchdown. So, I don't think Gunnar lit the world on fire. I'm old enough to remember Aaron Murray not having good spring practices. I'm old enough to remember Aaron Murray not having good G days. I'm old enough to remember Aaron Murray not playing well against Florida. So, These are all relative. We know what Gunnar Stockton has the capability of doing. The question to me is not necessarily about Gunnar Stockton. It's this: does Ryan Puglisi have enough quarterbacking in him at the college level to push or pass Gunnar Stockton? That's A. B, with Gunnar specifically, are the players surrounding him on the offensive line and the running backs, are the players surrounding him going to do enough to where it's not all on the quarterback's shoulders? In 2024, Carson Beck was asked to do too much. And when I say he was asked to do too much, he was asked by his teammates to do too much. He was asked by a coaching staff that realized what they had and what they didn't. They thought, hey, this guy can do some stuff for us. We've seen it. But it became a lot over time for Carson. When you think about the middle of the season, the way he played against Texas, the way he played against Florida, to some degree, the way that he played. I mean, Alabama was a tale of two halves. But, he also played extremely well against Tennessee. He all but won them that game by himself. Georgia Tech, they don't win without Carson Beck in that game. So there's got to be more than just a quarterback. If you're relying on a guy at the time, Carson Beck, who was potentially number 1 overall draft pick, a guy that people thought, oh, this guy could possibly win the Heisman. Well, some of that is on Carson, but plenty of that is not. Plenty of that is on what's going on with the offensive line. So that is the stuff that's got to be fixed. I don't know. There are some guys who have jumped out during practices, maybe not at the spring, at this scrimmage. And you can find out about all of that at Dawg Post. I'm going to tell you when those stories are live. But I'll tell you, if you're watching this and it's Sunday night, the stories are up. Okay, they're over on Dawg Post right now. So you need to go over there and check that out. But you're not going to be able to get there without a subscription. The good news is we got subscriptions right now for $1. You can check it out. Get 30 days for $1. I think at the end of the day, in terms of this scrimmage, what you want with scrimmage is always to get out of it healthy. Another thing that's been pointed out is like, hey, these guys aren't tackling to the ground. This is not everybody's not tackling to the ground. That's just not happening, and you wouldn't do that a lot of times in these situations. And many things are situational in practices, scrimmages. What you're working on. If you're working on free throws, that's not all of basketball. That's just free throws. If you're working on 3rd and short, that's 3rd and short. That's not 2nd and medium or 1st and 10. So you get my point. There's a lot of people too that you can tell by their comments that there's always worry about the players that left. Mikael Williams, Malachi Starks, guys like that who really pushed younger players. Those guys are going to be missed at this point. They're gone. And the playmaking ability and what they did in practice to develop other guys, that is something that you pay attention to too. It may have been one of those scrimmages, having not been there and having to rely on what people say. It may have been one of those scrimmages where, it wasn't anything unbelievable on purpose. And that happens a lot. But I know enough from the practices before that there are guys flashing. It sounds like that just didn't happen on Saturday. Now, is that a problem? I don't necessarily think so. I do remember you started hearing trickles about Todd Gurley in 2012. Because remember, at the time, everybody thought Keith Marshall, because of his speed, would be the person that really took Georgia to the next level. And they were desperate for running back production because they had lost Isaiah Crowell. So, Todd exploded onto the scene, the first game with that long kickoff return, but it really was after the Missouri game. It was a couple games in the season, and Missouri sort of held Todd in check. So sometimes it takes newcomers and new guys a little bit of time to get going. Make sure you're taking advantage of the opportunity. It's $1 for Dawg Post, our premium service over on the site down below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.